Yeah, so I'd love to take this time now and ask our speakers from M7 to introduce themselves. I am going to ask that we keep our introductions, and I'll introduce myself a little bit more in the context of FI too, but let's keep our introductions to just a minute or two if we could, just so we can really get to the meat of the discussion and also have a good Q&A period. So I'm going to start with you, Gary, and ask if you would mind introducing yourself.
Happy to. Can you hear me?
We can hear you great.
Okay, great. So a minute's usually a little short for me with all the letters after my name, but I'll try to make it quick. 35 years in healthcare, started out as a dentist, went back to medical school, became a physician, an anesthesiologist, trained at Harvard, did my residency there, met my wife who's a high-risk obstetrician there, and she brought me to California in 1989. Been here practicing at Sutter Health for the last 35 years. In Berkeley, California as part of Sutter. And during all that time, I've also done a lot of other things. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've had 3 companies of my own in the digital healthcare space. I'm an informatics physician lead for Sutter Health for the last 10 years, implementing Epic at all 27 hospitals. And then about 5 years ago, after traveling around the country, identifying my quite disenfranchised clinician colleagues, I started Global Health Impact Fund and Global Health Impact Network, which are basically a fund and a network that promotes active participation by clinicians in the evolving digital health revolution.
Great. Wow. Well, I said 1 to 2 minutes, but Gary, I think you actually did it within a minute. So that's amazing. It's great to have you here.
Not like Gary.
Right. I know it's hard to describe ourselves in even 5 minutes, but Ella, we'd love to hear from you.
Yes. Great to see everyone here. My name is Ella Lee. I'm the CEO and the managing partner of Hanhai BioLabs, in charge of this globalization in healthcare and also life science investment. We have around 15 innovation centers all over the world, with 3 in North California. I'm also the founding partner of M7 Accelerator. Later is the focus of what we're going to talk about later, providing acceleration, funding, and also other resources to early stage healthcare companies. Also as a venture partner of Network VC, basically providing funding to companies from seed round to Series A stage with LP from around 20 countries. Myself is a scientist turned venture capitalist, and I have 15 years experience in biotech research. I have special interest in therapeutic investment opportunity from drug discovery to commercialization, but also quite interested in digital health tech and also device space. It's really a pleasure to be here.
Great. Thanks, Ella. It's great to have you here. And Prasoon.
I think I briefly introduced myself, but a bit 1 minute introduction would be, so I'm Prasoon Mishra. I'm also like Ella, I'm scientist by training, actually. Did my PhD at Rutgers, stayed at academia for some time, then worked at the government side as well, was with US government, National Institute of Health, National Cancer Institute for 7 years, actually led their drug discovery development initiatives, and then transitioned to Genentech Roche, where also I was in charge of oncology, drug discovery and development, as well as their fibrosis, program. And I also am a co-founder of a couple of pharmaceutical companies, Agility Pharma, which is a technology-driven drug discovery company, and Precision Biopharma, which is an antiviral drug discovery company. And I'm also founding a partner in M7 Accelerator, which we are going to talk about. It's an awesome opportunity for you all to take an advantage of. And on the professional side, I chair WISE, which is World Investors and Entrepreneurs Society, which is an investment collective of investors that co-invest actually into deals that are very promising. The minimum check size is 5 million and above, so that's we come in later when you need more capital. And I also am president of American Association for Precision Medicine, which is the voice of precision medicine community in US actually. So that's all, and yeah, look forward to an amazing discussion.
Wonderful. Thanks, Prasoon. So I think with our format tonight, we're going to hear a brief presentation, and this is meant to be very informal, as you know, as these meetups often are. So some of us will use slides, some of us won't, but the idea is to really get a sense of what several different accelerators do, but also kind of get a sense of how different players in the ecosystem are connected. So some of you may have been at our Founder Institute Meet the Startup Ecosystem event a few days ago. Kind of in the same vein, in the same spirit, we're really trying to, share and illuminate how different players or different actors on the stage of the ecosystem work together. And accelerators are a huge part of that. But I think you'll hear, as we're hearing Ella and Gary and Prasoon, and then myself a little bit speak, you'll hear how necessary it is to understand the relationship between an accelerator and a founder and a VC, and what's an angel investor. You know, when do you go for maybe friends and family funding versus going to a different kind of funder, and how do accelerators prepare you for different kinds of funding at different stages? So we will be connecting dots for you tonight too, not just kind of describing a few accelerators. So I just wanted to highlight that. And without further ado, I think I'll turn it over to your team, Gary and Ella and Prasoon, if you wouldn't mind just, talking for, 10, 15 minutes, however long you like. And then we will, and then I'll talk a little bit. And then I actually wanted to ask you a few questions, some seed questions, if you will, that I think might be helpful for the audience to better understand after you give your presentation. And then we'll open it up to Q&A from the audience as well. So hopefully we'll have a rich discussion and also a very interactive one.
Ella, do you want to start, or should I start? How do you want to do it?
Well, I can give a really quick overview of M7 Accelerator, and I bet Gary has also a lot to add. And so we're gonna do it this way. So M7 Healthcare Accelerator, as I mentioned, we target mainly at a seed stage company. Although we also have portfolio in earlier and also later stage. For instance, for the current cohort, we have 11 companies staging from, in addition to the majority of them are in stage, we have also one in pre-seed and also one in B round. Industry focus, we have quite a diverse healthcare focus, including health tech, the digital companies, medical device, and also biotech company. So for instance, for the current cohort, we have a majority as a device company, health tech company, and also 2 biotech company in drug discovery. So currently we have around 70 mentors, including physicians, investor from institutional fund. We only invite institutional investors who are interested in healthcare investment, and lawyers, since many of our mentorship and also workshop are also focusing on that. CEO who have either a successful access or have a really great industrial experience. Regulator who are expert in, for instance, regulation and also such policy things. And also executive from big pharmaceutical companies. So we have a pretty diverse background. So our program runs along around 3 months. It's just the program itself. So basically we the content wise we include for instance a weekly mentorship. So we ensure the company will get to meet with the mentors. We have a matching system to let the company choose a mentor they want to meet, and also mentor choose a company they would like to talk with. And also workshop series. We have around, for this cohort, we have around 12 workshop targeting at different topics. for instance, what is how to best negotiate on term sheet about the patent protection. Also, a lot of companies are interested in entering, for instance, China. So China strategy, and also some revenue strategy. And also even we have the in-person coaching section. So this is more on the education part. And also, of course, we have the demo day. Actually, our demo day for the current cohort is in December 9th. And we're likely to also work with QB3 Santa Cruz, have them as our venue partner in Santa Clara. So you're welcome also to come December 9th. And after they graduate, so the 3 months is now after they graduate, we're going to also continue to work together with them. For instance, a lot of them, not all of them, so all of them have fundraising as their major goal, even though later we're going to talk about that. You shouldn't treat Accelerator as a financial advisor. We're not an FA, even though we understand fundraising is really important. So after they graduate from program, we're going to continue also work with, for instance, connect them also with a lot of investors we think are good, because our goal is to let the company successful. Is a mutual benefit. Yeah, so I will stop here. Gary, as a really important partner as GHN, they definitely also bring a really great value with all the physician network. Gary, I'll let you take over from here.
Great, thanks, Ella. I think the way I'll start, though, you know, and Dominique, per our discussion earlier, I'll take a more 10,000-foot view of just accelerators in general. And oh, I see now you're going to make me bring my dog up to the table here too, because he's right underneath my feet. But I'll do it after I stop. So, so I want to talk just a little bit about the concept of accelerators. And I have to tell you that anyone who knows me knows that I think that's really a misnomer for the term of what we're trying to accomplish with the idea of an accelerator. And I can't take credit for this, but Alex Kahana, who's a physician anesthesiologist, a blockchain and healthcare expert, coined the term escalator. And really the idea of the needs of entrepreneurs, innovators, and companies are more along the idea of an escalator. If you think about it, I'm a very visual person. You walk into a mall, okay, and the mall has 7 levels, and at the top of the most high-end stores in the mall, and at the bottom are all the startup stores that many of them are just ideas. And maybe they're a facade in the front with nothing inside. And every level of that mall is a little bit more graduated and mature in terms of the idea of the store or the company. And really what I've learned in my, you know, in my 30 plus years of being in healthcare and wearing that CEO hat 3 times is that the needs are very different. Even if everyone on the first floor is a startup, if you're running a clothing store, that's going to be very different than if you're running a Radio Shack. And how you build the store, the products that you sell, how you market it, and how you support it are all very, very different. And it's very hard to kind of put it all into a single silo. So in essence, especially in healthcare, we become very siloed as to what we're trying to accomplish. And I believe that really the future of acceleration is going to be more of this accelerator model where we can take each company by itself and customize what that company needs to reach its next milestone. That's the short-term value of, I'm a company, this is what I need. Now, if you look at just this group here, you'll see that Founders Institute is a very, very early stage accelerator that deals with companies at idea generation 2 before even having an MVP in many cases, okay? And what do they need? Their needs are very different. They don't need a lot of money, but they need a lot of structure. They need to learn how to build a management team, how to get to a point of building an MVP for whatever their solution is or product is for the solution that they're trying to fix. So their needs will be very different. And on top of it, they don't have a lot of resources. So they don't expect to spend a lot of resources to get there. But on the other end of the spectrum might be Global Health Impact Network's institutional fund and network, where we take Series B companies who are already generating revenue, are in multiple markets and moving towards an exit and commercialization, both domestically and internationally. And the needs of that organization are obviously quite different in terms of the advisors, the connections they need from a business development and marketing perspective. And they're really going to want to be with an accelerator or a level of escalator that can bring those things to them. And again, they're not going to give you 3% of their company if that's what the accelerator model is, because of the valuation that they have. So their expectations will be very different in terms of their willingness to spend whatever they want to spend to get to the next level. And then there's everything in the gray zone between those. So that's floors 2 through 6 of the seven level mall. And what we've been trying to do, again, just in general, not trying to pitch my entity too hard, but we are a network of clinicians, okay? And what I identified very early on, post my entrepreneur experience, was as an informaticist, there are a lot of very disenfranchised, unhappy clinicians out there who are being given technologies or have been given technologies that don't represent the needs of the patient and the provider. I mean, everything we build should improve the collaborative encounter between a patient and a provider, improve access, improve efficiency, and hopefully decrease cost, right? As opposed to increase cost. Now, of course, there'll be some cost to technology, but that should be with efficiency that comes with it. So we want to be able to address those issues in that gray zone between the second floor and the sixth floor. And as you move along the pathway, what we're trying to create, what Founders Institute in very much in a way is trying to create, what AAPM is trying to create, what Ella is trying to create with her current organization, and what our clinician network is looking to do, is not to merge all these entities together, but the word collaboration is very important. And there's a there's a disconnect right now in healthcare and in entrepreneurism there. It's very siloed. And what we want to be able to do is plug a company in at early stage and have them march along into this whatever collaboration of organizations it is, so that when they reach that next level where they now are ready to build their MVP because they've gotten through the Founders Institute, they should be able to be plugged into a subsequent accelerator that gives them all the tools to get to being able to commercialize by raising money for a seed round, by getting all the technology support that they need to build an MVP in the way that makes sense, doing the right research, and getting to that milestone. And then from there, they should be able to move from there into a network like GHIN that can provide all the support systems as well as the capitalization necessary. Because I will tell you, as a 3-time serial entrepreneur, probably the most time-consuming thing that an entrepreneur will have to do, yet it's the least helpful, is raising money. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of pitching, and it doesn't get you what you need to have a successful company. Whereas if you can join an entity that helps you do that in addition to all the other things, then your chances of success and early exit are beneficial to everyone involved, including the investors and the accelerator advisors and consultants and every part of your system. So that's the bigger picture of what we're all trying to achieve here by doing all the things that we're doing in our own individual silos. And it has to be that way initially, because you can't do everything for everybody. It just doesn't work that way. So for me, the network really provides two things. Now I'll get back to down to the 1,000 foot. And the 1,000 foot for GHIN, which you see behind me, is basically the capitalization component. What we have is the ability to fund everything from early, early pre-seed investments all the way through Series B commercialization investments. So we bring to the table that piece in addition to working with the accelerators that we work with, which means that we're improving the success of that company marching through those needs by providing the right partners, but they're all under one umbrella, so to speak, a global umbrella that we would be under. And then the idea being is that when they exit on the other end of it, it was all one connected entity. And I was saying to Dominique before, I tend to, can't help it with the last name Goldman, I use Yiddishisms, is that the problem with accelerators is, half of them, when you're done, it's like, don't let the door hit you on the tuchus on the way out. Thank you very much. Good luck. It shouldn't be that way. It should be, I finished this accelerator or this innovator. Let's plug you in now to XYZ like a network, and let's work with you all the way through to get you to the point where you're close to exit. And that's the way to create a successful organization that produces valuable startups that promote all the things that I spoke about. So, I mean, that's kind of how I like to present this. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about it, as you can tell.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Gary. That's a really helpful framing also. Thank you. I have a feeling we're going to have some great questions coming out of this session. Prasoon, did you have anything that you wanted to add before we move into some of the specific questions that I had for you all?
Yeah, so I think I would like to build up on Ella and Gary's, Gary's comments on. So, in the Bay Area, it is known as Silicon Valley, right? So there's a lot of technology accelerators. There are a lot of technology accelerators that pioneered the accelerator field, and then, healthcare is just a part of it, right? Healthcare startups are part of it. Some of them are still struggling to access all the things that they need. So that was the vision. And what Gary mentioned also is, these accelerators have the short program, and now companies are left out to wander, and the majority of them, not make it actually to the maturity of the product and product launch and commercial success. So as you see that we all had represent a different level of the accelerator, like Gary, escalator, like Gary mentioned, actually, of them all. So we come in at a later stage, actually, where we are now investing pre-series A, series A, B, C. So then our goal is to successfully create startups and help them scale, actually, and then invest into the startup that are scaling. So that was the vision, and we brought together. We know that healthcare startups take a lot of capital. Even when they're not startup, they're still capital intensive endeavor. So I think we have geared up to bring the best investors, actually, which will be invested in your success from the inception to scale, to product launch, to a global scale up. So that's our goal, and and I think we have been very successful. And now we have an ecosystem of global startups that are utilizing our program, and we are growing, and we have an enormous interest. So I think this is all, the bottom line is it's the friends helping friends. So we are all here. We have been there and done that. So I think now we are trying to see how we can help all these startups succeed. And then in the times we live right now, healthcare is the burning need of today. And then it will be shame to see some of these startups not make it because of the funding, actually. So then I think I'm a problem solver, and this is the problem that we are trying to solve: how to make all the startups succeed, and how to help founders with what they need to move forward, actually. So I'll stop there.
That's a great way to kind of cap off and kind of add that layer. I think reinforce that it really is a win-win when these founders do well, regardless of the structure of who you are trying to help those founders. There really can be a lot of reward, monetary and not, I think, for when everybody is involved as a village and not just as a one entity trying to help, this set of founders. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to share just a few slides just to add a little bit of color to the point that you made, that there are these different stages of acceleration. There's the early stage, and then there's the mid, and then there's the later stage. So I think the slides that I'm about to show you guys are meant to those of you in the audience, whether physicians or not, wherever you are, they're meant to show kind of two things: what Founders does as a pre-seed accelerator, and also how the different, as I said before, accelerators work together. So I'm hoping that those points will come across. So let me just share real quickly. And let me know if someone say, yay, if you can see my screen. Okay, great. So so basically the Founders is a large global pre-seed startup accelerator. And so these are just some numbers, and I flash these up just to show the breadth of geographies and I should say entrepreneurial disciplines, if you will, that Founder Institute covers. And so it's everything from finance to environmental to fashion to health tech, which is what we're all more interested in this group here tonight. Although many of us have diverse interests, and I'm sure some of our interests go beyond that. But that really is what Yuli and I have been working on with our team here tonight, Lavinia and our whole FI team, Ruchi and Nadia. We're really focused on the health tech area. But Founders itself is an example of a pre-seed accelerator that happens to be large, but that helps people of all different across all different kinds of ideas. So it's been around since 2009, really prides itself, I think, because of the effectiveness in its mentor network. It has investors. The investors you see here are not from within Founder Institute, but they're investors in the companies that we help at the early stage. We help, as we help them to become fundable companies. So our focus, as Gary said before so clearly, is that we really are pre-seed and pre-seed funding. Now, what does that mean? So real quick, our program, this is sort of our philosophy that I don't think anyone can really disagree with, but entrepreneurs can make a real impact on society. But often there's a lack of resources, particularly for early stage founders that don't know how to get going, don't know how to leave the field they're in, to really bring traction to an idea they have, or even, clarity and validation of their idea itself. So our program is there to, in any pre-seed program, although there aren't a lot of us, our program is there to help pre-seed founders and teams get to traction and get to funding, just as Gary was outlining, through the network and our structured growth process. So basically, we have a curriculum. We have about 13 weeks of structured teaching just to give early founders, an education on what is product development, what is customer identification, and what are the specific tools and knowledge that you need to know to get from an idea to the point where you have a pitch deck that will knock the socks off any investor that you go to, or at least that's the goal. But you get coaching on pitches, you get there's a lot of hot seats, you get tactical knowledge, you get mentorship, all of the things that Gary alluded to. You get that just catering to the stage that you're at. There's 2 tracks. So you actually we have a launch track and a growth track. So even within pre-seed, at that stage, we do have some founders that are further along. So there's a spectrum. So we do have 2 tracks that kind of are tailored to the stage that you're at. So we're focused on technology and technology-enabled businesses. So just to kind of distinguish FI again, we're focused on mission-driven founders, as is Gary and his team and our most accelerators. But like many other accelerators, that doesn't make us unique. But the admissions process is, as rigorous as other accelerators that definitely want to make sure that you have a mission and that you're in line with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And for health tech, those would align with improving population health, the way health systems work, access to care, customer experience, customer being the patient or the one that's needing the health tool or whatever it is that you're building to help people be healthier. So it's a pretty selective program, but it's also at the same time very open to many different kinds of technology, whether it's a technology that is software, hardware, mobile app, pretty much anything, as long as you're able to show a vision that shows that you have a vision that a funder we feel could get behind. So I'm not going to dwell. I'm just going to maybe take about a minute more because Gary actually thankfully covered a little bit of this. But pre-seed accelerators, the quick and dirty is usually don't even have a full team, don't have advisors, don't often even have a co-founder, don't have a live product. They haven't created a MVP, let alone a prototype. There's no traction. So we'll take you. That's pre-seed. Seed accelerators, as Gary said, have a team, a live product, and some traction. What does traction mean? Well, you've built a prototype at the very least, and you've tested it. You have customers that you've surveyed. You've actually tested your product with a particular population of people. You've shown that that population of people likes your product, and you've backed up, in the best case, you've backed that up with multiple tests or pilots. But even if you're a little behind that stage, seed accelerators can also have a range of maturity of founders that they accept. But the basic idea is that you're pretty early. You just have an idea when you're in the pre-seed stage. And so I'll kind of maybe end on the note, and then we'll get to the questions, that really at the pre-seed stage, it's a lot about getting the information you need to know how to build a company, but it's also about starting to really know how to network and to leverage your network. And so at Founder Institute, we have 70 or more mentors that are, including Gary, that are kind of handpicked or volunteer to help to bring our health tech founders to the place they need to be. So they could provide information on what a funder looks like. So Hanhai, for example, is a partner at Velocity Ventures. And so she provides a lot of advice on pitches. And this is what a firm like ours would look for. This is where you make the cut. This is where you wouldn't. Really honest advice, but from the perspective of a venture, a funder, that kind of a funder. And then we have other mentors that give legal advice, like Jason Novak. We have other advisors and mentors that give advice on regulatory requirements. So the gamut, mentors cover a lot of that kind of knowledge, as do mentors at a lot of accelerators. Ours are just very health tech focused. And then we have partners such as Plug and Play and Scale Health that come in, and they end up being mentors too, but they support in other ways as well. So we have a few alumni that really do come back and help. So that's part of the network that does provide the inspiration, but also the hard knowledge. And sometimes it's hard to hear knowledge about, this is what your company needs to work on or not. So we have alumni come back. These four fellows have gone through FI and created companies that are doing really well out there. And so like, for example, Tori over here and Francois, they've created companies that are doing well. And there's people in our cohorts that are doing similar things and have similar kinds of companies. And so we kind of do matching between, similar to what Ella was saying, there's sort of a matching process, but ours is definitely a lot more informal. But that's sort of a commonality that we have with other accelerators. And the network, I guess I'll end with, we try to funnel to other organizations, like it might be M16, it might be Global Health Impact Network, depending on where that founder is, how ready they are to, like all of our founders that graduate are ready to basically look for pre-seed funding and even seed funding. Not quite Series A yet, but they're ready to at least get, pre-seed and seed funding. And so we have a VC lab that helps to connect them with investors, but that's not kind of what we focus on. We focus on the early stage and getting them ready to the point where they can have a good conversation when they meet a VC or any other kind of funder as well. So I'm going to stop there and stop sharing my screen. We can answer more questions about any of our accelerators, over time. But I did want to pose a question now to the three of you, my fellow speakers, and I'm curious what you think about. We heard today a lot of our founders that are here tonight, or aspiring founders. They're doing a lot of different kinds of things. As you heard, they're at many different stages, like Oatmeal Health. We heard of Jim working in Africa. So globally, we're in a lot of different areas in this group. We have people like Mark Ouye working on, digital health to help people with back pain, and Access PT and Connect to Triage. So we've got a real variety of things. Of interests. So just even in this group, what would you say to founders that are discerning whether to join an accelerator? How would you help them discern whether to join, and if the time is right, and which one to join? Because we definitely see a lot of people that think they're ready for an accelerator, and maybe they are, but they definitely could make, they could have more information because it is a new area for so many people, about, criteria to think about, or just some guidance on, is it the right time? And if so, which accelerator, what kind of accelerator would be right for me? So do you guys have any advice on that?
Yeah, this is Gary. I think also it's not an all or none per the escalator comment earlier. Um, the wonderful thing right now compared to like even 10 years ago is, what we're doing, what Uli is doing, what Arlen Myers is doing with SOAP. I mean, there's so many resources out there, but it's still a little bit siloed. That's one of the things that we as a network are trying to do, is give everybody a presence even on our network, because it's, this is not a competitive environment, it's a collaborative environment. And I think many times in that really early stage, you don't really need an accelerator, you need a couple of advisors. You and I were talking about this earlier. When I had my first company in 1989, okay, Silicon Valley bubble was first building, and there was no such thing as digital health. And I built I had an idea for building one of the first online, in this new internet thing in 1990, a continuing education place, a place where you could go and complete continuing education. Because in those days, as a physician, you had to travel to some distant land to do it, or you would listen to an audio cassette tape, or maybe read an article, but it wasn't very convenient. And I said, why couldn't somebody just log on and either read or listen or watch? I was ahead of my time, of course, broadband wise. And that's what we built. But I had no idea. I was a dentist, I ran an office. That was the business experience that I'd ever had prior to that. So I was lucky enough to find a mentor, right? So I went to one of my anesthesia partners, who's, fortunately for me, he was the president of Maxtor at the time. And, so very experienced MBA. And I told him my idea, and he goes, God, that makes a lot of sense. He goes, let me help you write a business plan. And he taught me every step of the way. How do you start a company? What do you need bare bones to get the company up and running? How much money do you need? How much could I put in? And then he showed me how to raise money, and I went up, and again, in those days, you put .I in front of anything, and I raised $3 million, in not that long a period of time to build that. But I was lucky, but I was lucky to be able to find the resources. Now it's all around you. So I would say that if you have a dying need to be part of an accelerator, because you know exactly what you want to do, you know exactly what you want to try to accomplish, but you don't have the resources to do it, then yes. But I think you need to get to that point where you really truly understand the market that you're getting into. What's the addressable market? Who your customer is, okay? And what's the first stage of what you're trying to accomplish? And then use what's out there to identify one or two advisors that can help you. And I will tell you that, our network does that, as any clinician can join our network for nothing, and they could get connected with the right part of the ecosystem to get to that next point. And then what we'll tell them is, okay, now you've reached this point. Now let's introduce you to Uli and Dominique, because you're at that stage now of needing a bit of money, but more importantly, getting to that point where you're really ready to raise money. So that's how I see it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Anything to add, others?
Yeah, I'm gonna go next, Frisson. So yeah, it's pretty thorough for what Gary was saying. Just something to add. This is kind of similar to fundraising. So the advice we usually give to startup company is for the fundraising strategy, especially in this the terrible timing, is really to first understand your need. You need to understand yourself. For instance, what stage are you really at? Are you really, for instance, pre-revenue, post-revenue? Do you have a product yet, or at least have some idea validation? If you are, for instance, still in the under round, so maybe it's not a good idea to approach those who always target at a later stage of the accelerator. vice versa. So it's really understand what your stage, and also in industry focus. Different accelerator have definitely very different expertise and also network. Some accelerator are generous accelerator. Some of them are more focused on the clinical resources. And some of them has also a lot of mentors coming from, for instance, biotech space. So you really need to do your work. You need to, so before you spend all the time to applying to the accelerator, first do some work. For instance, you could find out all the information, find out what is, are they the pre-seed or seed accelerator? What are their industry focus? Who are their mentors? 99% of the accelerator will put all the resources out there. And also take a look at of the alumni, the graduate portfolio. And if you are able, for instance, get into the interview round and ask them whether you're able to talk with some of the alumni. Those are all, of course, and also one element you also have to consider that we haven't really mentioned about it is, yes, a different accelerator has different charging model. Yes, there are some accelerator out there that just provide free resources. And usually that is type of the accelerator funded by, for instance, the state money, or has their own funding resources. This is also good if you could get in. This is no problem. But most of the accelerators still, they're going to also charge 30% of the equity. So it's really up to you to do your own work. Different company definitely have different need. So I'm saying just we found a lot of company when they apply to accelerator, they really have no idea what the accelerator do, and they just apply to all the 50 accelerators out there, and then to see who can really get selected, who can get in. It's not only not good for them to be selected into the program. It's really a waste also both sides time. So I'm just saying, do some work before you really spend time on that.
And kind of on the affordability piece, just a quick add-on question. It seems like it should be pretty easy to find that out up front, right? I've noticed that a lot of founders, because it does vary a lot, don't know right away, or it's don't know until a later stage of application that it costs this much, or this much equity in particular is going to be taken from them. And that's a surprise later on. Sometimes they've even gone through the program and missed that in the application materials, I guess, but not necessarily, just generally speaking. Is that something that's easy to research and find out quickly? Any advice on how to find out up front?
Yeah, this is a really good point. So you're totally true. Some company, first of all, now all the accelerator will list all this detail on their website. So you really have to talk to them. If they don't have such information, try to talk them to begin with, like in the very beginning. There are some company that we deal with. You will be surprised. We already in the term sheet negotiation round after all this application interview and also term negotiation, and then they found out, oh, you're charging, this is the way you're charging, where it's not going to work. It also looks bad on yourself, even if you decided to drop out from the program, but it's really a small circle. We all know each other. If you don't really do your job, it's also wasting time on the program themselves. So it's just very easy to start in the very first beginning. Just ask them the simple question. They will be really upfront, transparent.
Great. And someone chatted in, most of the reputable accelerators usually have FAQs with the terms, and that's true for Founder Institute, and I'm sure for 7 too. And that's something to so look at the website, look around.
Right, and I think again there are a lot of resources out there that you can reach out to, and there are a lot of entrepreneur magazines and resources that have lots of articles which talk about this kind of stuff. The one thing that I always feel really prudent to say is, because it's fairly common across the board for especially inexperienced entrepreneurs at the very early stage to be really worried about not giving away too much of their company. Okay. And in many cases, it's really too much worry and it's just distracting. We actually created a calculator, which if you look at your company and you march your company through pre-seed, seed, Series A, Series B, by the time you get to the point where you're actually making revenue and have a reasonable valuation, the amount of equity that you gave away that early is so diluted out by the time that you get to that point that you would laugh at it. But we're never in that space of thinking about it that way. So it's a better way to think about it. Obviously, if somebody says I want 50% of your company, that doesn't make any sense. But you know, I wouldn't be worried about 3% versus 4% versus 2%.
Great point.
If you like and respect the group that you're talking to and they come highly recommended, I guarantee you that the 4% is a better expenditure than the 2% of someone you're not sure who they are.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the other part of it. You know, you car shopping, pick the best car.
Yeah. Yeah. Some perspective around what
Right.
that will mean when it's diluted is something that's part of the education, right?
And never be afraid to, again, never be afraid to ask, can I speak to one or two startups that have been through your accelerator and get their thoughts about who they are, you know, and what you provide? Because believe it or not, they might think that they're going to get the best recommendation, but I found people to be fairly truthful, especially with fellow entrepreneurs. So that's another way to do it. Do a little bit of research.
Yeah. I think that's personally one of the best ways that you can learn about what happened is talk to somebody that went through it. And people are very honest, you know, because it was a hard experience probably. But yeah, I'm going to take a pause and see if anyone from the audience has any questions. I know we've touched on a few topics that usually spur a lot of questions, like equity and warrants. We could go that direction and talk a little bit more about that. But I want to take a pulse here of our audience and see if anyone has any specific areas that they want us to talk a little bit more about. Now you've heard a bit more about different kinds of accelerators. Does anyone have anything that they want to ask? I'm just going to take a pause here.
Yeah, we got hands up here, Dominique.
Oh, great. I just heard about, yeah, I see you, Andre. Okay.
I have a question about MVPs. I'm at a at a stage where I'm ready to kind of get one started, and so just trying to figure out the best way which ones do as somebody who's going to fund a project would you rather see the working model of it, or is a nice PowerPoint of walking through the process of a of the demo, is that sufficient in some cases? Or if not, which case is one better than the other?
Well, I think if it, you know, obviously in healthcare, there's so many different sub verticals you can go down, right? So if you're talking about a platform solution that's going to be used by HCOs, let's say, that's specialty specific, then yes, I would say that at least have that's what an MVP is, right? Minimal viable product, right? So you want something, it doesn't have to be fully functioning, okay? And again, that's one of those areas where I would really talk to somebody who's been down that path before, because if you're going down that path, there's so many other issues you got to worry about in terms of interoperability, integration into electronic healthcare records, you know, how the users are going to access it, yada, yada, yada. There's a lot of different things. So it's not worth at an early stage to try to build too much too quickly. And you're right, if you can come up with something that's really a minimally viable product, but gets across the message of what you're trying to accomplish in a very directed way, that will go a long way with a venture capitalist that's looking at it. Whereas if you try to do too much, I guarantee you're going to get ripped apart anyway by people at that stage anyway. So I would be more prepared, and this is where most people fail or have trouble. And that's why accelerators are important, or at least having the right support, is your presentation is going to be the most important thing, okay? you have 4 minutes, let's say, or
Yeah.
10 minutes to present, or 1 minute sometimes, okay? Or it's an elevator pitch. You need to really understand your product, and you need to understand it in a way where you don't do it, what I say is the Gary way, where you could say in 2 words what he took 1,000 words to say. You really have to really practice it and make sure that you're very pointed as to what you're there's a whole series of, they say you should never have more than 19 slides or 17 slides. And each slide should have a specific focus, and it should have very little wording on it, because you don't want your readers to be lost up in what you're trying to present. Remember, the average individual doesn't retain very much from a single slide. So you want to be very pointed. What's the message you're trying to get across? You'll have plenty of time to build the platform and to do it, and you're going to get plenty of feedback from your users, from your customers. Everybody's going to tell you what they want, so you'll end up with many different iterations. So don't get too focused on the MVP. But when you are ready to build your product, which is an MVP that you want to commercialize, that's where you're going to spend all the time and the money. But if you're early on, don't worry about that.
Got it.
Right, and also something to add. So I assume you're talking about when you pitch to Accelerator, right? Instead of like when you're already admitted into the program. So it's really different strategy. Once you're into the program, of course you can just show your weakness, show the part of you, the product where the company need help. And when you pitch your company, is very similar. Like when you pitch to investor. This is what we found for really early stage company. One thing really frustrates us is sometimes it's really, you'll be surprised, you'll be really focusing if you're only giving, let's say, 10 minutes presentation. You don't really cover all the important element. Yes, product is important. For instance, you are talking about MVP. It's totally okay that your product is really in early stage, but we want to see whether you are a full package. At least you like really touch several other points to be successful as a successful company. Talk about your team, and even though you only have MVP, then how is your product different from other players in the market? And also whether you already have some validation. This validation part is really important. Whether you already talk with some physician at least. So we're always saying that we want you to do this customer profit analysis first. Whether you should work with, for instance, if your hospital use or medtech product, work with physicians in the very first beginning, and whether you have already considered your exit strategy, some financial. It's okay if something is not correct. This is why Accelerator can really help you. But we want to see you understand that you are not just a pure engineer, your full package. Those are the things are really important. Yeah, just something to add.
Great, thank you, Ella.
I think I can.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I think I can. I can add a little bit. Before minimum viable product. I think Founders Institute is at idea stage, right? So I think a POC is a better way to go, right? Where you have you are trying to make smaller pilots to see if the idea that you're thinking is viable actually. So which is there are different steps. The one is demonstrate the need for the product. Actually, 2 is ideate the right solution, right? And there could be different solutions built, create a prototype and test it, right? That could be the easy way. And then step 4 is gather documentation feedback actually with your your target audience, and final present final POC. So it's a proof of concept actually that your idea will be working. But I think that going back to your question, if you are at the idea stage, yes, the presentation is the way to go. But then next better is the POC, and then minimum viable product actually that demonstrates that your product that you're thinking is almost ready and can be just modified and scaled. Yeah, that's it.
Mhm. Yeah, and these accelerators we're telling you about can help you know exactly how to do that. If anyone's like, I don't know how to do a POC, or there's different ways to do it, and there's very, very simple tools that allow you to do that too. So that's kind of what an accelerator helps to do. Vipula, now over to you. Do you have a question?
Hi, hi. Good evening, everyone, and lovely, insightful, discussion here. So one of the questions I have, and Gary, you mentioned this as you're answering the other question about the platform technologies. So when we have a platform technology, and we started to look at, we were funded by National Science Foundation, phase 1. So we started to draw down into our area where it would be the most efficacious and most valuable. And as we were learning and applications of our technology, we found that we have some really low-hanging fruit and we'll have to pivot because the technology is still the same. I think it's just the way it's applied to different areas is going to change quite a bit. It's almost like you want to get a 90 horsepower car or you want to get 1,000 horsepower car and what it's doing for different things, right? It gets really challenging when you're presenting the investors, then they'll probably say, well, why are you not focusing? And how do you address that question when you're trying to explain to them the big picture, but also trying to focus on the tree in the forest, but they still want to have everything nailed down for that tree, but they're missing the full picture. How do you address that?
Well, I think to take a step back, what that identifies is just like there are a million subverticals and there are hundreds of innovators and entrepreneurs, there's lots of different types of venture capitalists. And you're going to find some venture capitalists who, again, you have to define, right? So if you're going to come to me, right, and you're going to come to my group, we're a bunch of clinician venture capitalists, right? So if you're going to present anything healthcare, I guarantee you we're going to dive deep down into the clinical and the research and the scientific evidence-based information behind it, and how do you think you're going to make your money? I mean, if I had $1 for every, I was talking about it before, if I had $1 for every time I came up across a platform company, and look, you're talking to somebody who's been a physician informaticist for 9 years. I know what the interoperability issues, and I know what my users will do and what they won't do. And if you're going to develop a platform where you have to go out of the electronic healthcare record to get to the solution, dead in the water right there. Okay, that's number one. Number two is if you're going to develop something that is not easy to use, you got to know your user. Okay, if you're developing a solution for neurosurgeons, guaranteed they're going to delve down into the most minutia that you can even imagine. Now, if you're developing something for a bunch of orthopedic surgeons, all they want is red light, yellow light, green light, and that's it. And if you give them too much, they're not going to use the product. They'll tell you it's too much information. I don't have time to deal with this. And, with all due respect, I know, Jim, you're sitting there and you're an orthopedic surgeon and they're my best friends in the world, but you got to know who your end user is and who's sitting at the table asking you the information. So there are going to be times where you're going to go in there with a perfect deck and people are going to say, oh, you know what? I want to see this, 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 and this. And that's cool too. Bottom line is that if you've got their interest at that point and they want to have a second meeting with you to get that information, you've done your job, but you're never, ever going to present everything that everybody wants. So you got to at least do the 80-20 rule. And that's the practice part. And going to these accelerators, you're going to learn what the average VC wants to hear, as opposed to the expert in the field who knows everything about yours and is a subject matter expert for you.
Thank you so much, Gary.
Sure.
Yeah, and entrepreneurship is a group sport, right? Actually, I think your tree and forest analogy actually, it's fine as an individual tree, you get lots of light, you get, in an isolated area, but the forest has its own advantages, actually, a very good support system and, other things. Just to give you an example from M7, right? The idea, if you see who is in here, Rome Gary leads a global health impact network and fund, which is one of the, very reputable, fund out there in the healthcare. Ella has led some of the largest funding agencies that are already limited partner in some of the biggest venture funds in Valley, actually. And I lead World Investors and Entrepreneurs Society, which is a network of ultra high net worth individuals, actually. So these are, if you get accepted in the program itself, you're being backed up by a massive forest that gives you opportunity to not only to grow but scale and be part of this amazing and network. And our goal is your success, because there are different stakeholders throughout the ecosystem, like Gary mentioned, and they all are looking for your success. And individually, a tree can die, but in a forest, a tree who has gotten a good support system can grow. And some of these companies so remember, the rule is, if whoever gets massive funding acquires the other company, actually. So if you are that company who is prone to acquiring other companies or being an acquisition, that's your decision. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Prasoon. Jim, you had a question?
Yeah, relative to M7 specifically, what is M7 investing in their cohorts when they select them? And what percentage are you asking for with your investment?
Ella, did you want to take that one?
Sure. I can take this one. So equity wise, we're charging 2%, capped at a 100,000 valuation of the company. So since we're really targeting at a seed and also even later stage, so most of the company has a much larger valuation compared to actually the proportion of the 100,000. So actually for most of the company, what really they're paying is probably like a 1% of the equity. So I think like Gary, like 30 minutes ago, reached a really a great point. So a lot of company, they just thinking, even for that 1% of the equity, I don't know. But just thinking about this, really, when you have some, company has like a different advisor, you're giving out how much, 1% of the equity to those people. But Accelerator has like hundreds of all the advisors together, be bringing more resource right that is really nothing if you can succeed. This is the goal. Investment wise, we don't really do investment for every single company when the program starts. We select, so after the program, so it's a 3-month program, and after the demo day. So the demo day, we have also the judge panel. We're gonna also have all this feedback from our other investors. And then based on our own, of course, like we have our own score, and also have our own evaluation, and also coming from our other investors. And then we would select companies to invest, since not only, let's say, the 3 of our entities have our investment arm, and also as I mentioned, the mentor, one category of the mentors we have are only institutional investor. Actually, I don't think I have included any angel investor, but all the institutional investor, they could be also the funding source. And also we're also doing SPV, GHIF. Gary's GHF is doing SPV for some company or direct investment. I'm also doing some SPV and also some investment to the company. So it's really the bottom line is really up to the quality of the company. There are some companies, for instance, are really in the competitive stage. They get already all this check before the program start, before the program finish. Yeah, so hope that that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. And I think before Shako Alapet, I see your hand, but I know we had one more person before
Jose.
had a question. Jose, and then we'll go to you, Shako.
Thank you, everybody. My name is Jose Bolaños. I'm a physician and IT architect. One of the interesting things in the healthcare, well, first of all, thank you very much for bringing doctors together to be able to actually take your brains and the funds that you have to actually create greater wealth and a better future for medicine, period. And Gary, I'm so excited that you raised $3 million on an idea. That's incredible. So when you think about SaaS, when you think about software versus medical devices, right? With medical devices, I can't imagine just an idea being able to get funded, because what we've encountered right now is VCs want to invest in the A, B, and C round. So they want to make sure that we're having a very difficult time right now. I'm the CEO of nimbus-t.com. We have a patent on a new secure identity system that protects logins to enterprises. Hospitals have been hacked with COVID-19. Everybody was logging in from home, and what we're finding is this right now. We've been in development for 4 years. We have invested $1 million into the development. We're raising a $3 to $5 million seed round, and we're using the Y Combinator safe note, which is a much easier than the convertible note that was given to us by Wilson Sonsini in Palo Alto. And so what's interesting here is we have a lot of meetings with VCs, and they were excited about what we're doing. Like I said, we have a patent, 2 trademarks. We're members of X9.org in Washington, D.C., which are the cybersecurity advisors to the banking industry. And what we've created is something that's more advanced than Okta, and they're worth $40 billion, and they bought Auth0 for $6 billion. So the cybersecurity environment, most of the systems are protecting the perimeter. We're protecting the front door, where 80% of the intrusions are through passwords, 15 billion passwords on the dark web. So some of the stuff that we need is we're pre-revenue. We're just now launching, but we've had a hard time with VCs. They go, we love what you're doing, but start generating some revenue, and then we'll talk to you at the A round. So we're not putting a valuation on the company right now in the seed round. The convertible note helps so that we put the valuation on the A round. And so that's some of the logistics that we've actually deployed. So with regards to some of the solutions that we have here, are you guys focused on seed round funding? And again, I'd love to participate in the incubators you guys have. But can you actually give me a better idea of, because Gary, you're talking about venture capitalists, and the venture capitalists we've talked to, they don't want to talk to us on a seed round.
I disagree.
Go ahead, Ella. And then we have one more question, so we do need to wrap up soon, but go ahead, Ella, please.
Oh yeah, so I will be really quick. So I have to say yes, realistically speaking, the funding situation is really tough, not only for the company, but also for the funding ourselves when we try to do the fundraising. So this is especially a lot of companies are facing this down round. This is definitely true. Really quick to your question, no, a lot of VC are investing in C round of the device company. I have invested in many round of the company of device, and those companies are, of course, majority of them do not have revenue. This is not really the reason they reject you. But when we look at the pre-revenue stage of the device company, the reason we want to invest them is we did see some validation. For instance, if you already have some pilot already doing, maybe it's just the no revenue pilot study, or you already established some partnership, or if you have like really niche market where this technology is really way better compared to the #1 leader in this industry in the whole world, or if your team CEO are the really renowned person, there are definitely something. If you have really nothing, then it's indeed really tricky, especially in device in device space. Device space, generally speaking, compared to others, investors like later stage. This is a reality, but definitely you can find the investor focus on the early stage, because valuation are also different, and this is a really for companies really tough time, but for the investor, we see this great timing because the price are pretty good.
Well, I want to thank everybody for helping the healthcare environment. I mean, to bring doctors together in intelligence and advancing new technologies and helping. That's a fantastic mission. So thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Jose. And Chaco, I think you'll be our last question, and then we'll close out the evening with some next steps.
Okay, thank you, Dominique. And thanks again for all the moderators, very interesting and informative. I am kind of a neophyte question for definitions. As far as source of capital, would you guys consider your companies micro VCs, angel syndicates, VCs, or just angel network? Because I'm a little confused on that. Do you have limited partners and all that? Thank you.
Question.
So just to answer, is your question, when you say you guys, you mean the individual accelerators and the relationships they have with venture capitalists, or how?
I mean, like the Global Health Impact Network, would you consider yourself a micro VC or a syndicate of angels, or does it not matter to a founder?
Well, I mean, it's obviously important that everybody understand the differences between those, right?
Yeah.
And I'm probably not the right person to ask. Our network is all of those things because we do everything from early stage special purpose vehicle investments, okay, all the way through Series B institutional investments. We have 4 different funds, okay? Now, what precedes that is what Dominique works with Uli and their investor partners, okay, are much earlier stage, right? And then beyond that, there are of course Series B and beyond and P and E. So I would say that for Ella, myself, and Prasoon, we can cover everything from seed stage through institutional. Okay, it just depends on the maturity of the company and where you are. So what determines the investment is not really the investor, it's the stage and maturation of the company for that particular investment group.
Yeah, I would underscore that. I think that's well said. And there's actually investment stages. So there are some metrics that you can use as kind of guidelines or kind of gates. Like pre-seed, usually your monthly revenue is 0 to 50K. And then for seed, it's closer to 25 to 200K. And then for Series A, you're bringing in a revenue of 200K or more. So that's kind of the earlier stage markers. And there's more, and I can share a document with you guys if that helps. Your growth rate's got to be a certain percent month over month, and so there's, for example, for Series A, it's got to be 25% or more. In general, these are like, guideposts, but if you don't know where you're starting, they can be really helpful.
And I just think the other caveat to that is also the idea and the company and the evaluation, right? Because if you're a pharmaceutical company, okay, and this is an early stage investment, your exit strategy to your venture capital investors or whoever your investors are is going to be somewhere in the 7 to 12 year range, okay? Whereas if, like one of my companies, if you're a company that's developing a market disruptive way to monitor the fetal heart, okay, and the minute that company gets FDA approval, they're going to get acquired by Philips for $500 million. That's a very different story, because I can tell you our approach to that is, for that kind of company, we may come in and internally syndicate. We may say, you know what, here's the money for the early stage, but we're standing in line with the fund to step in when you're ready for the MVP. And then when you're ready to commercialize this or get close to commercialization, we'll come in with the Series A funding as well, right? So there's a lot of different ways to kind of to kill that cat, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and from the M7 perspective, we have, kind of a seed stage companies, but also we have some late stage, company. They also join and they're getting value out of our ecosystem. So I think we are open for even later stage companies if they can get value out of us, and and we can join and team up to help them become successful. I think we are open for that actually as well.
Yeah. I think, Chaco, and maybe we'll have a follow-up on this, but we should close. But I think maybe I'm hearing a bottom line too, that different ventures might have different, amount of stretch in their bandwidth for the level of maturity of the company that they're going to take on. And that really depends. I've seen companies and worked with mentors from companies that, it's definitely, we only take this amount of, revenue per month on, or this amount of company valuation on, or round size. They have more strict parameters. So you got to get to know the VC, kind of to the former point, like the funder. But we can definitely follow up on this and have maybe a follow-up, because we will have more sessions in the series on Accelerators 101, which is becoming 201 and 301. So we're like making headway here.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I think we're probably going to need to close just out of respect for the time. I want to thank our speakers and friends, Ella and Gary and Prasoon, for joining us. Wonderful discussion. And Gary, thanks ongoing for being a mentor to not only our InnovatorMD community, but also our FI community and our M7 community. We have all these acronyms, FI, M7. But yeah, and everybody, thanks for coming and for taking time. And I hope you learned a lot. This has been recorded thanks to our awesome team. We'll have follow-up sessions on Accelerator 101, and we'll have the chance to continue the discussion. Also, just to explore different parts of the universe. I'm looking at Ella, your background on like the constellations, and it's making me think of how complicated this world is. But it's not as complicated as you think. I think once you have a lot of the knowledge building blocks. So thanks everyone for coming. Thanks for everyone's chats, and definitely keep networking with each other offline. Does anyone want to add anything before we break, especially our speakers or our back-end team?
I'd just like to thank Dominique, and I'd like to thank Ruchi and the team for really putting together a great event. Believe it or not, this all happened in a very quick period of time, and they did their usual spectacular magic to make it happen. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Ruchi and Nadia. And yeah, thanks, Gary. Have a wonderful evening or day, everyone, and we'll talk real soon.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everybody.
everybody.
Welcome. Bye,
Take care.
everyone.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.